motion?
Yes. Hello, I move to direct the superintendent to identify how FCPS can adopt best practices in energy and resource stewardship in facility design. FCPS will prepare for a school board work session to examine A, net zero design. FCPS will identify where the division currently is on any factors that lead towards net zero ready and recommend pathways and associated costs and time to obtain 20 to 25 energy usage intensity, or EUI, per facility, which is a measure of a building's energy per square foot. Net zero design and building specifications will provide a superior energy efficiency building, resulting in lower operating costs over the life of the school compared to the existing specifications. Furthermore, net zero buildings can be teaching tools and community examples about the benefits and necessity of energy efficiencies and renewable energy technologies. B, electrification planning. Present an approach for how FCPS can incorporate the principle of electrification, moving away from fossil fuel components like heating and cooling, to prepare for the future availability of such technology. C, circular economy practices. Present an approach for FCPS of how FCPS can incorporate practices that plan for how future builds and renovations will be disposed of when their lifetime ends. Secondly, develop an operations energy strategy. Develop a plan that identifies metrics, timeline, and staff responsibilities for measuring energy use, includes annual goals for energy use, and establishes a regular timeline for reporting to the school board. And 3, establish a plan to regularly independently verify and vet schools in the Collaborative for High Performance Schools, known as CHIPS, program by a third party. FCPS already participates in CHIPS, and having the regular verification will maximize use of this tool. In an effort to more fully ensure that FCPS is following sustainability best practices, we will be CHIPS verifying 2 of our upcoming projects.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Frisch. Ms. Marin, would you like to speak to your follow-on motion?
I would be delighted to. So these follow-on motions are the culmination of reflecting and listening to extensive advocacy, not only during the CIP period, but years in the making. They also reflect extensive conversation and work with our facilities department, with Mr. Plattenberg, and we have determined that creating, pulling together the information and data to understand where we stand, where we want to go, having that go through a work session so we can really grapple with it, and then figure out for the future CIP and work and budget where we can start to build these things in. These are best practices. Our neighbors over in Arlington have their net zero schools. These are just modern day technologies that we need to embrace if we want to care for our environment and reverse climate change, and also respond to student interest in doing the same.
Thank you, Ms. Marin. Mr. Frisch, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank Ms. Marin for leading and her thoughtful leadership on these issues. I know that she spent many, many hours talking to advocates and experts in this field before bringing these suggestions to the school board. In many ways, we're having this conversation because of committed students and parents. Students who asked us to put solar on our schools, and some moms out front who want us to get electric buses, community members who want to preserve their green spaces. And so this is us telling our community that we're taking the first step towards building net zero schools and making sure that our future renovations are net zero as well, to begin that necessary planning. We can't wait for our leaders in Washington to tackle the challenges of climate change. It's incumbent upon every level of government to do their part to confront this colossal challenge. And I am excited that we are hopefully taking that first step. Again, every level of government must act, and so here we are. Thank you.
Ms. McLaughlin.
Just briefly, as I've shared with the public in the past, growing up in Northern California in the 1970s, we were talking about and seeing our neighbors with solar panels and how we were going to take golf carts and have electric cars from that same technology. And here we are, 40, 50 years later, and still not where we could have been. So I'm very excited about the direction that the 10th largest school system can lead and hopefully inspire other school divisions, not only in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but at a national level as well. So thank you for the hard work that everybody put in to bringing forth this very detailed follow-on motion. I'm thrilled to accept it, or to support it.
Ms. Tolan.
Thank you, Ms. Marin. Yes, we've all worked many years toward this, and I was super excited that you put forward this motion. I also just want to throw in that similar along these same veins and working with our advocates, we're also very concerned at looking at student knowledge and green careers and renewable energy technologies and learning spaces for that. And I'm happy to say that that will be a forum topic, so that we'll be able to work on that further. But thank you very much for all of this great, forward thinking on our facilities.
And with that, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of Ms. Marin's follow-on motion? That is unanimous. The motion carries. I now call on Ms. McLaughlin for a follow-on motion.
Chairwoman, I had one more follow-on motion that was on a different subject. Thank you. I move to direct the superintendent to consider how and if space for early childhood learning spaces can be included in the design of each construction and renovation project and identify costs for the design and maintenance of these spaces in an effort to create needed community space for early learning.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Seconded by Ms. Derenak-Kofax. Ms. Marin, would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure. So while early childhood learning has been a passion from the start of my career 20 years ago when I first worked at the U.S. Department of Education, I was newly renewed about it at our joint board retreat last week with the Board of Supervisors when we saw lots of alignment and interest in responding to long overdue community asks for more early childhood space. And while we certainly can't know the exact number just yet, we certainly can consider how we can add classrooms. Just visiting this week, I've been to a few schools that have 2 classrooms, and it's a lovely way to incorporate our youngest students in spaces into the school experience. So in talking with, again, Mr. Plattenberg, we felt that this was a reasonable way to approach exploring this new area.